Hey, Rubrik, Hasan Minhaj here. First things first, I just want to let you guys know I'm so bummed that I don't get to be a part of the conference and digital summit this year. I was so excited. I always love going to Chicago and seeing the city and being around the people. And I was really, really pumped to come speak and hang out with you guys. But I guess we're gonna have to make the best with the circumstances and with everything that's going on right now with COVID. I'm gonna try to make this work. So here goes nothing. Um, we were supposed to do, a 30 to 45 minute sort of fireside chat, but we won't be able to do that in this iteration, in this version. So I guess we'll do this fireside chat from the bedroom that I've currently sequestered off here as I run away from my wife and two kids. Just to give you guys a little bit of background about me, some of you guys may not recognize me or know me. My name is Hasan Minhaj. I am the host of the Netflix show Patriot Act, which is a political satire show where we do investigative deep dives every week on various different topics, ranging from international stories to taking down dictators, or just more social issues of day-to-day things that are happening in people's life. Student loan debt, drug pricing, even Supreme and sneakers. So that's what I do now. But to give you guys a little bit of background about who I am and what I do and sort of how I got here, I was born and raised in uh, Davis, California, which is Northern California. And growing up, child of immigrants, my family moved to the States in 1982. I was born in 85, grew up in Davis, was not into comedy at all. I did not know it was a thing. I was like most Indian kids. I thought I was going to, do pre-med and be a doctor. Ironically enough, like, I think we need a lot more doctors now. But yeah, I was just doing the math and science thing, was a speech and debate kid, and I really fell in love with it in high school. And again, I did not know what stand-up comedy was. When people told me about it, I was like, "Oh, you mean like on Seinfeld, where Jerry's in front of the brick backdrop, and he's like, 'What's the deal with laundry?' And he's doing all that sort of stuff." And I'm like, "That's the least funny part of Seinfeld. The best part of Seinfeld is the show, not the cold open." And it wasn't until I got to college, my freshman year. This is going to date me a little bit, but T3 lines were very popular, and everybody was downloading stuff illegally. Not me, my roommates. I, of course, would never download anything illegally. Everybody was downloading content, through Napster and LimeWire. And one of my roommates had downloaded a bunch of stand-up comedy specials. And I walk in the year's 2004, and I walk in and he's watching this comedy special called Chris Rock, Never Scared. And I'm watching this special, and Chris is talking about the US government and war and relationships and sex and religion, all these like very taboo topics that you're told to never talk about at work or in class. And he's in Constitution Hall and he's killing. People love it. All of these third rail issues that you're not supposed to talk about, he's talking about them head on. And something clicked for me in that moment. I was like, wait a second. Chris Rock is doing funny speech and debate. Like, he's presenting an argument, just like we do in forensics, but he's just doing it in a funny way. And I went back to my speech and debate days, and I remember when I would debate people either through impromptu public speaking or actual debate, anytime I made fun of the other person's argument or anytime I made the judges laugh, I'd always get 10 to 15 points higher on my score. And I realized, I was already kind of doing that. I should dive in and do that. So again, I was not familiar with stand-up comedy and the rules and the jurisprudence that, you have to carry yourself and do this if you want to make it as a comic. So the first thing I did is I just Googled, how do you be a stand-up comedian? And the first thing that came up was, it just said, go to a comedy club, call them, and ask them to perform, at their open mic night, or ask to open for a comedian that's performing in your local town. So I Googled the Sacramento Punchline and who's performing that weekend at the Punchline. I go to Google. The first thing that comes up is the Punchline in Sacramento, which is about 10 miles away from UC Davis, where I was going to school. And I click on the name. I go, who's headlining this weekend? And it says Dave Chappelle. And I was like, all right, cool. Whoever Dave Chappelle is. I had no idea this is Dave Chappelle. Again, I didn't grow up with cable. I did not really know a whole lot about stand-up comedy. I called the club. I say, hey, is Dave Chappelle performing this weekend? And they were like, what? And I'm like, yeah, Dave Chappelle. Is he performing this weekend? Can I open for Dave Chappelle? And they thought I was messing with them. And so they were like, who is this? And I'm like, I'm a comedian. I want to open for Dave Chappelle. And they're like, well, you got to get headshots and you got to get a reel, and we don't know who you are. And they hung up. I remember being devastated. And then just, I don't know, something came over me and I decided to just go down to the club when Dave Chappelle was performing. And I was like, hey, I was the guy who called, and they're like, are you the Dave Chappelle guy? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, I just don't have enough money for headshots and a resume. Like I'm just a freshman in college. And they were like, okay, look, we said that to get you off the phone because we thought you were crazy, but just come back and come to open mic. And open mics are on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and they're on Sundays in San Francisco. And so I ended up going every week to the open mic, and I slowly started learning just what it took to be a comedian. And some of the foundational principles I had already kind of learned through high school and college, but I kind of took that hard kind of study mentality that I already had with stuff that I would do in college, but I kind of applied that pre-med energy to comedy, and I fell in love. And I just really fell in love with the science of putting together an argument and making it funny. And I just tried to be the funniest local comedian. My career kept growing from there. I got better at comedy. I graduated from UC Davis. And then the next big step is you either move to LA or New York. And I was really, really, really terrified. The move to LA just seemed like too much. I grew up in a small town, and in a weird way, I kind of convinced myself not to do it. And I moved to San Francisco, and I worked there for a couple years. I actually worked in tech for a couple years. I lost my job, but I worked in tech for a couple years during the day. And then I moved to San Francisco, and San Francisco had this amazing, burgeoning comedy scene. Comics like Moshe Kasher, Ali Wong, W. Kamau Bell, Arj Barker. These comics were starting to build a voice and a following in San Francisco, and they were a class above me, and I just kind of learned from them on how to build an act, how to have a unique voice, how to immerse yourself in a community and grow from there. And one of the pieces of advice that I got was threefold. Someone told me, hey, get up every night, get on as many shows as you possibly can, be the best possible person in your local community, kind of build a buzz locally. Number two, show up consistently, be one of the hardest working people in the scene. And number three, don't be an asshole, and everything will work itself out. And I found that to be very true. A lot of the people that I came up with in my class were the ones that recommended me for jobs, helped me move to LA. So around 2008, 2009, I won a competition for Wild 94.9, which is a big radio station in San Francisco, and it was called Best Comic Standing. Whoever won that got to open at Comedy Jam. Comedy Jam was a huge concert that happened every year where they brought out huge headliners to the San Francisco Bay Area. So the year that I won, I beat out all the local comics, and I got to open Comedy Jam. That year, it was Russell Peters, Joe Coy, Cat Williams, Pablo Francisco, Gabriel Iglesias, all performing on this huge bill, and I got to open and do 5 minutes. But that win was a critical win for me. Not in the sense that I felt like I was on the same level as Cat or Russell or Gabriel or any of these guys. It was a huge win for me in the sense that out of all the local comics kind of in our minor league division, I won a competition that proved that I was the best out of that group. And that gave me the confidence to say, hey, maybe I can go to LA. So a lot of times in life and in your career, you know, it's not just about perseverance and toughing it through. You need critical wins. There's these critical wins that happen for you that kind of just break everything open, and you realize, okay, I can go. So that was a sign for me in the fall of 2008. And in 2009, I ended up moving to Los Angeles. And the next 5 years were really, really tough. I ended up putting together a sketch group in 2012, and three of my friends, Ari, Fahim, and Asif, we created this sketch group called Goatface. Basically, we had met at a bunch of auditions, and we were never booking anything. Hollywood wasn't particularly looking for our type. And so we figured, hey, we're these rejects that can't get into the game. What if we just shot and developed and made our own stuff? And we kind of shook hands and had a brown paper bag agreement that day where, hey, we're going to pool our money together and we're going to shoot YouTube videos. We're going to launch a sketch show and we're going to do it ourselves. And, you know, each video would cost us about $300. We would pool our money together and we would shoot it together as a group. And the videos started going viral. They started catching attention from, you know, all the sort of digital outlets at the time. And it was a big deal. Like if a viral video broke and if Mashable picked it up or if HuffPo picked it up, it was a big deal. And our videos started going viral and we started getting attention from show business. But one of the things that I learned from that is, you know, show business came knocking, but again, the opportunities weren't great. It was always, you know, to be the eighth man on the rotation or the ninth best friend in a sitcom. But being in Goatface, the sketch group taught me two things. It taught me to be completely self-sufficient, be able to write and produce everything, the whole kit and caboodle from the bottom up. And it also taught me about just completely owning your narrative and your legacy and what you want to say. And believe it or not, I had this mini series on Goatface, our sketch group, called The Truth with Hasan Minhaj, where I would just basically do a monologue directly to camera about my take and my perspective on something that was happening during the week in culture. Coincidentally, very similar to what I would end up doing on The Daily Show. Those videos went viral, and I made it a recurring series. And in the fall of 2014, I got lucky again, where an opportunity opened up, and then I kind of just had an existing body of work that perfectly fit with that moment, where it was just perfect product market fit. For those guys who do what you do. Michael Che had left The Daily Show to go work at SNL, and there was an opening in the number of correspondents that were available to, you know, take a slot on The Daily Show. Now, The Daily Show generally, if you look at their roster, would only have about 5 to 7 correspondents at any given time. So the people that would stay there, Steve Carell, Ed Helms, Samantha Bee, Jason Jones, John Oliver, they would stay there for like 5 to 8, 9, 10 years. And being able to get a slot on that show was just rare. People really wouldn't leave. Someone would go leave to be a movie star and there'd be one slot available. So Che leaving was just, again, a huge coincidence where at that point I had been doing comedy 10 years. I had established a body of work. I had established a clear voice and had practiced a specific skill, doing a chat directly to camera where you can put an over-the-shoulder graphic and I can just go and provide my take. So I submitted my tape, and because I had the infrastructure of our sketch group, and this is the key about owning kind of your skill set, I already had a DP that I worked with, a couple of like comedy writers that I love bouncing ideas off of. So I was able to turn around a script, an original script with an original idea and an original field piece, shoot it all, put up the Vimeo link, send it out. And that was really it. It was a Vimeo link in a dream. And John called me back for a screen test. I screen tested with Jon Stewart and I got hired. And, again, that was a second critical win that happened in my career that just changed my life. And again, just time and time again, there was these moments where I would just grind away for years and years, and an opportunity would come, and then I would just go all in. In 2017, same sort of thing. I was on The Daily Show for about 3 years. John had left the show. Trevor had replaced him. We were in those early the new era of The Daily Show under Trevor Noah, and we were establishing our new voice of the program. And I got asked in 2016 to do the Congressional Correspondents' Dinner, which is like the minor league for the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That went great. And then in 2017, the WHCD asked me, would you like to do the White House Correspondents' Dinner? And that was another opportunity where I had prepared myself previously. The speech had gone really well. I knew how to do 20 to 25 minutes in front of a uptight Washington, D.C. political audience. And that moment, again, just put me in the national spotlight. Later that year, I put out my first comedy special, Homecoming King, on Netflix, which won a Peabody. And then Netflix kind of came forward and they said, what other ideas do you have? And I had been developing the idea for Patriot Act for a couple years at that point. I had been really thinking about, hey, I want to do my own thing. Sometimes there's not enough runway room for me to do it on The Daily Show. What would that show look like? And I produced and developed that. And I shot my own proof of concept. Again, just sort of owning my narrative. Netflix bought that, and that now is the show that I host with 100 amazing people. And we've won an Emmy and a Peabody, and it has been a dream come true. COVID-19 really sidelined, again, and this was for the whole world, but it really sidelined the hopes, dreams, plans, and aspirations that me and the show had. We were actually in the middle of production, set to debut our new batch of episodes a couple months ago, and COVID just ran through New York, and it was really, really, really scary, but we had to shut down production. In the middle of shooting our second episode of the cycle, to ensure the safety of not only the staff, the crew, myself, but everybody and their families, quite honestly, that works on the show. And there was a couple weeks where we all were just sequestered in our apartments, and we were licking our wounds, and it was really, really tough. It was really hard for us to deal with. And I was thinking about, as I was sitting at home, I was really thinking about, when are we going to come back? How are we going to come back? What is the show going to be? What is comedy going to look like? So much of what I do, and why I wish I was with you guys right now, is I get up on stage and I connect with the audience. There's this like real visceral connection of having a conversation, setting up something. Comedy is about, building tension and then cutting it with a line. There is none of that now. I can't build tension with you guys and then cut it with a punchline. And so much of our show is the stage and the screens and the audience. And my showrunner, Prashant Venkataramanajam, is one of my best friends. I'm sorry, Prashant, I messed up your last name, but he's one of my best friends, and we have created and written a lot of our projects together. And Prashant and I were talking. And one of the things that he said, look, we can do the over under all day on when the vaccine is going to drop and when things are going to, go back to quote unquote normal. But listen, you and I have to play offense, and we have to be creative given the circumstances that we have. And he reminded me, he said, remember when you were first making YouTube videos, you used the budget that you had at the time. So whether it's a Subway foot-long budget where you had $15 and you made the best with what you had, or you're spending $1 million an episode to create this like beautiful data viz kind of investigative reporting show, what tools do we have to make the show great? And so over the past few weeks, we have once again, we went back to the drawing board and we created our own proof of concept called Patriot Act Quarantine Edition. And I started making digital content called Hasan from a Distance, of just like my life at home as a way to connect with fans. But we shot a proof of concept we built a home studio here at my place. And it's called Patriot Act Quarantine Edition. And it's going to be debuting in a couple weeks. And I'm really excited for fans of the show to see us not only come back, but to see how we're going to integrate all of those beautiful data viz and graphs and pull quotes and tears and clips that we normally do on the show. All of the stuff that we want to do from here on out, you guys are going to see it in our future episodes. Really address the big questions that people have in a post-COVID world. So some of the big topics that we'll be covering this cycle are going to be rent and evictions, the education system, college, schools, reopening schools. Is college even worth it now if we have to do it all virtually? These sort of rubber meets the road questions I'm really, really interested in talking about, instead of a lot of the stuff that's happening right now that's, speculation in regards to vaccines, or getting really, really sort of deep into, bashing specific politicians. I usually try to pick topics that affect people's day-to-day lives and then attack it that way. And so I'm really excited about the new episodes of Patriot Act Quarantine Edition. And I remember, we're in production right now. So I was just in a writer's meeting, and I remember Prashant asking me, hey, are you kind of bummed that, you won't be shooting it in the studio with, in front of all the fans of the show. And I said, look, like, one of the things that we always come to terms with as creatives is writing to the highest level and the highest level of our capabilities, given the variables that we have and we can control. And so, are we writing the best possible material we can? Yes. Given the variables we can actually control, meaning I can't control the studio, I can't control the crowd, I can't control our ability to shoot in front of that safely. So what can I control? And we've just quadrupled down on the variables that we can control. Building a set here at home, learning how to operate the cameras and the green screens, figuring out a completely touchless post process. And I think, no matter what sort of what line of work that you're in, I think the people that are going to really win during this period of time are the people that can innovate and make best, given the circumstances that you have. In regards to me personally, this has been really, really tough. Like, on one hand, not having a school to send my 2-year-old girl to has been really, really tough. Baby girl loves preschool. She loves her friends. She had play dates. There were all these things that we had. And there was a moment of mourning where, she has not been on a play date with her friends in now 50 plus days. And that sucks. And we would always have our walks together in the morning where I would drop her off at school. That's not there. That sucks. April 25th, I was set to host the White House Correspondents' Dinner this year. That got delayed. That sucks. And I was just kind of mourning. We had a moment, me, my wife, we were just mourning the loss of all these things. Like, I don't know what it was. I was just feeling this sense of like, man, there were all these hopes and dreams and these things that we were so used to. And we mourned that, and it sucked. But, there was also a moment of just like a lot of gratitude that things got pulled into focus in ways that they never were before. I have friends and colleagues who've lost loved ones to COVID, parents, grandparents, stuff like that, like really, really dark, awful stuff. The fact that I'm healthy, the kids are healthy, my wife is healthy. My son was born just recently, so we have a newborn too. Knock on wood, everybody's healthy, and like I think those things kind of got pulled into focus. Another thing is that yes, perhaps a certain opportunity went away, but then these other personal opportunities opened up. This is gonna sound weird to say, but like my 2-year-old daughter, we're super tight. Like, she likes me more than she likes her mom, and I really enjoy that right now. Like, it's fucked up to say, but like I'm like, yeah, Vina, like, I mean, baby girl likes me more than she likes you. And I don't know if I'll ever have 50 plus days like this where I wake her up and get her going and I put her down every night and we have, several hours together uninterrupted. Just that's really, really quality ever again. And so I'm trying to focus on these moments that are really, really beautiful in the wake of abject horror and destruction of just things that are undeniably awful. And I think life is like that. I think so many things in life are like that, where you can have these beautiful moments in the wake of truly awful moments as well. That duality can exist at the same time. All right, so I'm going to take this opportunity to answer some of your guys' questions right now. You guys submitted a bunch of questions. These are really, really good. So I'm going to just take a chance. This is pretty cool for me, actually. This is like deep cuts, which we have on the show. But I'll read these and try to provide the best possible answers that I can. So this is from Michael. He says, what's it like being a comedian during these crazy times? Lots of new material, I'm assuming, but a different type of crowd to play it for. Social media versus real crowd. Which do you prefer? So to me, hands down, it's a real crowd. The reason being is because stand-up comedy is a uniquely American art form in the sense that it really was born and birthed out of nightclubs in the United States of America. And it was this art form, to me, again, this is just my personal opinion, that was built on these foundational elements. You were able to talk about all the taboo subjects that you're not allowed to talk about at work or at home or, in religious institutions. You could go after politics, sex, religion, relationships, all of these things that, again, can be divisive. And, people would come to comedy clubs, to these like little basements, so adults could drink and laugh about these things that we're not supposed to laugh about. And so the art form in and of itself, it's a live art form that's built on, building pressure through a premise and cutting it with the punchline. There's a reason why, they're trying to do Zoom comedy clubs and stuff like that. That ain't it. So for me, I can't wait for things to get back to, when I can perform in front of a live studio audience. So I was really excited. I was supposed to go on tour this fall. That's been moved. But what I am doing, and I think what I'm going to do on the show is, let's lean in the direction of the variables that you can control. So I think right now the mediums that are booming and blossoming are audio, podcasting, storytelling, things that don't require that sort of live banter, that connection that you need in a live studio audience. Books. There are other ways to be funny. Hopefully you guys check out the new episodes of the show. The way we're storytelling in the new version of the show, it feels very vlog-like. I'm just going to go directly to camera. We don't have the multiple angles, camera 1 and camera 4, where I can turn and play. I just go directly to the audience. We have the wide and the tight, and then we've created graphics that can kind of just live around me without the screens. And so figuring out ways to storytell and leaning into the circumstances that you have, I think certain things are going to blossom right now, and certain things are just going to have to take a backseat. And I don't try to half-step things. So look, I'm not trying to create a virtual comedy club, because you will fail. So I'm leaning into the mediums that I think are going to work right now. And that is, I think, stuff like this, where you're just directly looking into the camera and you're communicating to an audience and just storytelling that way. That, podcasting, audio, and books, I think, are gonna really see a resurgence right now. All right, this is from Katie. This is a great question. Hey, Hasan Minhaj, what were some of your favorite TV shows when you were growing up? So I'm a 90s baby. Well, I was born in the 80s, but the 90s really shaped me. So my all-time favorites were Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters. It was actually the TGIF lineup was really great. Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Family Matters, Seinfeld, Simpsons, and specifically seasons 3 through 8 of The Simpsons, I personally thought were amazing. Those were some of my favorite. Okay, does your wife find your jokes to be funny? No. Bina does not think I'm funny at all. She thinks, she doesn't laugh at my jokes. She laughs at when funny stuff happens to me, but she does not laugh at my jokes. And I tell her that all the time. I'm like, babe, you don't think I'm funny? And she's like, no, not at all. Yeah, it hurts. I'm not gonna lie. But then, I was talking to a friend about this, and he was like, comedy is actually a low status art form. And I was like, what do you mean by that? And he goes, every great comedian talks about bad things that happen to them, which then gives the audience permission to laugh at themselves. But you can't poke fun at them. You have to lose in every story. And I was like, you're right. Every great comic that I loved growing up is kind of self-deprecating in a way that makes the audience love them, because in every other aspect of our life, we're always flexing. Your LinkedIn, you're flexing, social media, you're flexing. And a comic gets up there and is just like, look, I may be short, I may be, girls may not like me, or I struggle dating. There's all these things that comedians are so vulnerable about, and you can see it from Richard Pryor to Kevin Hart to Chappelle. There's these very human moments of this idea of hey, I don't have it all figured out, and you can laugh at my pain, and you can laugh at my situation. So I think Bina not thinking I'm funny is another kind of beautiful comedic concept, because the irony of that is amazing. I'm a professional comedian, and she does not find me funny at all. What's your new work from home routine? For me, what I've done is I take the mornings and the evenings with my daughter. So we've had to shift from zone defense to man. Our newborn, my wife takes, and then in the middle of the day when I'm doing Patriot Act stuff, we have our nanny who lives with us. She takes our daughter. And so then I have to hide, which is what I'm doing right now. And I make the bedroom my office. And I do all of our writing sessions and our check-in meetings remotely. So this is what I do. This is from Chris. What is your favorite style of shoe and colorway of all time? So 2012 at the Nike Town in Las Vegas, I saw the White Cement 3. It got re-released, and I was able to buy them in store. And I just remember that feeling of like getting them, and it was amazing. Is there a fear you have overcome to get the success that you have now? Yes. And this is something I still struggle with, but I try to remind myself of this every day. So, failing professionally does not mean you have failed as a person. And what I mean by that is so much of show business is putting yourself out there and asking to be picked. So you're auditioning for a role, you're auditioning for a movie, you're auditioning for an opportunity, and you will literally get rejected. I'm not kidding you. I've been on thousands of auditions. I've done thousands of sets, and they have not gone well. The majority of them. And oftentimes I feel like in life, we conflate our professional failures and we say that they're personal failures, or vice versa. Like, we think if something's, affecting us personally, it also reflects upon us professionally. Those two things get mixed up all the time. And one of the things that I've had to remind myself is just because you wanted to get a part in that movie, or you had this dream for this script or this thing to go this way and it didn't. The network passed on it. That doesn't mean you are a failure, you are talentless, you don't have anything left to give, you've peaked. All of these kind of whispers that end up happening and that sometimes haunt you as a creative. That's the thing that when I've been most successful, I've been able to separate those things. And when I've been least successful is when I've conflated those things. So yeah. Is cereal a soup? Why or why not? It's not a soup. And you may know this if you're a fan of the show. I do not combine milk and cereal. I have them both separately. I eat the cereal, chew it, then I have a sip of milk. This is from Michaela. In Patriot Act, you've discussed compassion fatigue due to how many tragedies and issues are constantly being pushed out to the public. What tips do you have on dealing with compassion fatigue, and how do you determine which issues to focus your energy on? So this is actually really great, and I wish I could have updated this because I wrote that headline on the show in December 2019, pre-COVID, but post-COVID, and I remember about the first 20 days or so of quarantine, I was checking the New York Times app literally 8 times a day. And I realized it was a little bit masochistic. And I've done 2 things since. I check it once in the morning, and then I immediately do something physical afterwards. And I'll tell you why that works for me. Number one, every time I go to the New York Times and I see the front page, it is going to be devastating news. It's probably going to be things that are particularly upsetting and not cool. And it's important. It's important to know about what's happening in the world, but it's also important to know that like there is only so much control I have over those things. And especially if you read the opinion page, that A8 section, I mean, if you go to the Wall Street Journal or the New York Times opinion page, it'll just work you up into a frenzy. And what do I do with that anxiety and that kind of fear? And I just found, even if I just do 25 jumping jacks or a bunch of push-ups, or I go take a walk afterwards, I need a place to burn and run through that anxiety. And so I'll do that, and then I'll get back to the meetings. And then I'll be real. I know my show is a political satire comedy show. I don't check Twitter. I just don't. I have a digital team. I have people who kind of tell me what's going on. But I will check the hard news, one source, once a day. And then I'll just focus on the episodes that we're working on. If you could only eat one thing for lunch for the next year, what would it be? Okay, this is weird. This is where we're at. We're at day 50 plus of quarantine. I love quesadillas. I'm a quesadilla king right now. Me and my daughter, we eat quesadillas every day for lunch. I hope you guys don't think I'm a bad father, but I'm pretty good at making them. Little quesadilla with sriracha is really good. I don't know if you guys have read this book, but it's called Grit, and it's by Angela Duckworth. It's a really, really fantastic book. It basically, and again, this is just coming from me. You know, as a kid growing up, I always thought this is dorky, but there was always a kid in the community that would get like a 1600 on the SAT, and everybody thought that kid was the chosen one, and I believed in that. I believed in this idea of talent over work, and one of the things that Angela Duckworth talks about in her book Grit is oftentimes we assign so much value on talent and we don't put enough value on long-term grit, meaning pushing through, having a consistent and persistent work ethic towards a goal or vision over the course of 10 plus years. Meaning I'm going to devote myself to comedy or tech or business or whatever that venture is that you've decided, and saying, I'm just going to chip away every day. And it's so interesting. All the people that I looked up to in comedy were lifers like that. These 3 or 4 people have had a huge impact on me comedically. Jon Stewart, Colin Quinn, Mike Birbiglia, and Stephen Colbert. I've had a firsthand experience and opportunity to see these guys up close and see how much they work. And what I mean by work is yellow notepad writing every day, reading and writing every day. Just the most boring part of comedy, they're doing it every day super diligently. And I remember asking Jerry Seinfeld the same thing. We met once during our episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee. And I asked him, how often do you write? And he said, every day. And his act stays pretty similar year to year. You know, he only changes out a little bit of material. But to see that sort of humble worker mentality really tapped into what Angela was talking about in the book Grit. But there's something that she talks about in the book that I think is really useful given everything that's happening right now with COVID, where we all across the world feel powerless in the wake of this public health pandemic. And she said there's 2 types of people. There's optimistic people and, there's obviously pessimistic people. And the way they look at problems is they think of the problem as permanent and pervasive. Pessimistic people think any problem that comes their way is both permanent and pervasive, meaning this is going to last forever and it's going to affect everything that I do. And optimistic people have the ability to see difficult things as impermanent and not pervasive. So with COVID right now and with what it's done to my dream and my vision, comedy, it feels permanent, but I know it's not. I know there's going to come a day when we come out of this and I'll be able to perform in clubs again, because I know people feel that. People want to go out. People want to be human again. People want to have a human connection, So it's impermanent. And there's days where I feel like, hey, is this COVID thing is just pervading every aspect of my life. But I try to take solace in knowing, no, it doesn't. I still have control over my morning free writes, the writing sessions that I have with the other writers, my rewrite sessions. All of these things are variables that I control and that are not pervasive. And so keeping that as a perspective has been really good for me. There's times where just like, I'm holding my daughter and she's crying and it feels like, dude, she's never going to grow up. But I remember, like, she's 2 years old right now. I remember her when she was 1. This is going to pass, And so understanding that things aren't permanent and they're not pervasive has really solidified this idea to me that, hey, this thing that's happening in this moment may be shitty, but it will pass and things will be okay. And then that kind of puts the onus on me. Okay, so you have this moment, you have this day, you have this free evening. Your daughter just went down. What are you going to do with this moment? And when I put those things into perspective, I've made the choice to kind of open up the notepad and start writing out future episodes in the next special. And that's been really, really productive for me. And then there's also just been days where I've just said, fuck it, I'm about to have some Talenti ice cream. So that's me. And that's the way I'm looking at this new reality. I hope you guys continue to curate and cultivate your skill set during this time. Bet on yourself. Walk into failure and know that it doesn't mean that even if you step up and you audition or you try something and it fails, it doesn't mean you're a failure as a person. And I hope all of us, whoever's watching this, we all, and this is just to check myself too, we all stay ready, and we get that next opportunity ready to go, because when we come out of this, again, people are going to be ready to go to shows. People are going to be ready to watch shows. People are going to be ready to watch new movies and new ideas. And, I'm going to have to be ready, and I certainly hope you guys will be too. So I wish you nothing but the best, and I hope you're safe, and I hope your loved ones are safe, and you guys are doing okay. And this was really fun, and I hope to do this again in person someday. So take care. Bye.